So you're all very welcome again to our Literacy Friendly in Action, Creating the Conditions for Confidence Building webinar. And we're delighted to have such brilliant speakers to share their experience with you today. So the webinar really is an opportunity for volunteers and workers in the community and voluntary sector to learn, examples from 2 projects and how they took a literacy friendly approach. And this means that the organizations we'll hear from today, I suppose, provided extra supports or adapted their way of working to make sure adults who'd be nervous about reading and writing maths or digital technology, that they made an effort to make them feel more comfortable so they could take part. Our wonderful speakers today are Davnet Hickey, who is the Employment and Training Coordinator in Cork Simon, and she'll be speaking today about the learner support service they developed. And then we also have Jessica Lard, who is the Adult Education Programs Officer with Liffey Partnership in Dublin, who would have been formerly known as Ballyfermot Chapel Lizard Partnership, so you might know them by their former name. And Catherine Toomey, who's the Community Education Facilitator in Ballyfermot in the City of Dublin Education and Training Board. And they're going to be talking about their Keep It Lit project, which is really a brilliant project they did just last year. So I'm going to first hand over to Jessica and Catherine to talk about their project. We'll have space then after they talk for questions, and I really encourage everyone to ask questions. And then we'll move on to Davna, who'll speak about the project there in Cork Simon. So over to you, Catherine and Jessica.
Morning, everyone. My name is Catherine. I'm actually now the Adult Literacy Organiser in Ballyfermot and Dublin 10. And we're here this morning, I'm from the City of Dublin EGB, and we're here this morning to talk about our project that we did under the Collaboration and Innovation Fund as part of the ALL strategy.
Hello, thanks for that, Catherine, and thank you, Derv. It's wonderful to be here today for the Literacy Friendly in Action, and we're so excited to share our project Keep It Lit. It was wonderful, very heartfelt, and something I think as workers in this industry that, there's always one special project and it's still there. So we're delighted to share it with you today. Thank you for that introduction, and as well, most of you might know that we were Ballyfermot Chapel Lizard Partnership, and now we are the Liffey Area Partnership, so I'm still getting used to that name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share, which is just a presentation, just to go through the outline of it. Okay, so we were very lucky to get the All Adult Literacy for Life Fund last year with our project Keep It Lit, and it was really aimed at looking at people within Ballyfermot and Cherry Orchard with deprivation, poverty, with education, lacking, I suppose, the skills and the confidence even to step in and go in for a course. And so this was where myself and Catherine came together, brainstormed and decided, let's go for something. And we did change the name now. We were quite happy with the end one. So look, the overview was to bridge the divide with digital competence, literacy and language for marginalised adults. So we did identify them as having unmet literacy skills, and they were hard to reach. So through the collaboration, we provided a series of specific literacy and language IT courses, which we had specialised tutors within CDETB and the Liffey Partnership. But the extra element of it, which was quite unique, was that we had some inspirational writers in residence. So we had a link in with Poetry Ireland here. So these were writers that were published and that had a unique style of coming into that classroom setting. So what it did was it basically looked at really tapping into that person's creativity and their story. So the literacy was, it wasn't a major part, and we'll see next for example, One of our groups, and Catherine's going to talk about this after, was a Ukrainian group, and we tapped out into the local hotels, the Sheldon Hotel, the Clayton Hotel, that they had families there from Ukraine and other different nationalities that were living in emergency accommodation. So we had reached out, and luckily we did get a group that came in. But what we identified was that although we were putting a call out for local groups, what really was important was that we had actually groups in the community that we tapped into. So Catherine's going to talk about the groups involved.
Good morning, everyone. So yeah, as Jess said, and I would be advice we would give anyone thinking of running a similar project, is it's a great way to work with established groups you know have out and met literacy needs, and groups who will be open about that. For example, the groups we worked with the Library Park Women's Traveller Group, who are from Ballyfermot, who are a huge part of the community in Ballyfermot, and they're very clear. They're a self-directed group. They're very clear on what they would like to work on, and they were very keen to work on producing a book recording their own culture, their stories, their recipes. So we approached them and they told us what they would like to work on. And I think that is the big part of adult education, is that the learners will plan and decide their own education. The Ukrainian group, then, we met Ukrainian people had come with the start of the conflict. So we had a community of Ukrainians who were living in Ballyfermot and negotiating schools and services with very limited English. So language and was a huge part of language learning and reading and writing and incorporating, letting people show their skills was a huge part of that group. Then the nursing homes, we had the Maryfield and Glenallen nursing homes, where people had been quite isolated, but the staff in the nursing homes were really keen to have the community involved and to get the community in and to try and, make a new experience for their learners or for their residents. And then the Wise Women are in the Blue Door project in Cherry Orchard, which is a house on the Cherry Orchard estate itself. And the Blue Door would work with people towards crisis intervention. They would do some justice advocacy. They would work with people who may have experienced issues with addiction or intimidation. They're a wonderful organisation, and that was another great thing, is that we went to where the learners were. Like, the learners felt very comfortable there in the Cherry Orchard estate. They're in their own estate. With the nursing home, we were working in the home, and then with the Library Park Women's Group, they picked the venue that they wanted to work in. They chose somewhere that they were comfortable with and the projects that they had a history with. So I think that was very important as well.
Thanks.
Okay, Jess.
Thanks, Catherine. So I suppose as well, it's important to say that overall we had 34 people that participated. There was 13 travellers as well, 16 older people, and then 5 Ukrainians. So the project itself as well accumulated into a live show performance for the first time, and this is important to say that we also had a documentary, so we're grateful that we have it today, and we're going to show you a little clip then, and to get more of an insight and why it's so important to document these projects, because we can write so many reports, but having something tangible like that and coming from the learner's voice as well. And we had a reach of over 70 from local providers. There was family-based staff within the nursing home, staff within the partnership, and ETB and Poetry Ireland. So it was a good reach. So the project started on the 19th of September and finished on the 23rd of November. And we ran them for 8 weeks. Some of the classes had 2 hours a week, and they did maybe 2 classes. So this is just an example of how it actually ran and the timeline. So considering it was such a short timeline, and what we achieved was actually quite remarkable in the end. But we had unique writers. For example, with the Traveller group, we had Catherine Ann Cullen from Poetry Ireland, and she had worked on them with their reading and writing, but then they were working on a book called The Traveller Way, and this was something that they really dived into with the literacy supports from ETB, and then were able to perform a song on stage from their book, which was amazing. But this is just an idea of where the locations were, the groups, and the timeline. So we also had to put in for rehearsals as well. But yeah, so as well with the nature of some groups already set, some of them are quite busy, as you know, and they might have, you know, other activities. So some of them weren't really able to be in the documentary, for example, the Wise Women's Group. So they were doing everything and anything through through that time. So so we had to kind of capture who we could. But that's just an idea of the timeline. And then this is our poster then that we put out into the community. So it was a showcase of talents. And we also invited other people that were connected with groups that maybe had a talent and wanted to sing a song, or we also had a guest speaker, Colin Keegan, who was a poet, and he was like the end showstopper that had a connection with the audience and with the area and performed some of his poems. So it was a great night of entertainment, kind of in celebration onto it. And so, yeah, Catherine, do you want to talk here?
So I suppose one of the key things Jessica mentioned was the reach that we were able to have. And I was at the Adult Literacy for Life conference on Monday, and someone there mentioned that literacy, as is mentioned in the All strategy, that literacy is not just a right, it's a responsibility. And it's not just the responsibility of the ETBs and of NALA, but it's a cross society issue. And I think that was very much a key part of our project, because when we were working with Liffey Partnership, I mean, that is a huge, broad organisation. They would focus on community development and employment services as well. So you're getting organisations like that involved. And as well, we were working in healthcare settings. So we were promoting literacy and the fact that people may have unmet literacy needs in all areas of the civic life. And the event itself was in the Dublin City Council civic offices in Ballyfermot, and where you'd have the MABs and the citizens information as well as the housing offices. So it was also a great way to promote literacy and literacy services, and the work that is done with unmet literacy needs, and as well to promote for services like that who would have attended the performances, that they would have people in their offices, coming to their offices, who may have unmet literacy needs. And like we would do literacy awareness training with GCP and other organisations in Ballyfermot. So that would be part of it as well. I think the important thing is that, like, it encompasses, like, literacy is very broad, as we know. So we used a broad definition of literacy, like reading and writing was a key part of it, but speaking and listening are a huge part of literacy as well. And the programme focused very much around storytelling, particularly the Labrae Park group. That's a key part of their culture. With the Ukrainian group, they were able to tell their stories, and we had a translator to help with that. So that was a key part of it. And I think as well, in terms of the social literacy, the ripple effect out into like what came from the project and people's skills. And Jessica did some fantastic work around performance and stage work with people. And we had afterwards, the Labrae Park group, like, the book sold out, like it was sold in resource centres across the area. And they ran a book club as part of a Cherry Orchard festival. And members of the community came and asked questions, and the women facilitated the group themselves and spoke about their culture. And it was a fantastic day. And there was community workers and members of the Cherry Orchard community came, and a lot of them would never have participated in a book club before. So it was a brilliant experience. And again, a celebration of oral storytelling. And then literacy changing lives. I think that's the thing as well, particularly in terms of digital literacy. And we would have worked on digital literacy with the Wise Women and the women in the nursing homes. And it's just, when you realise how disabling it is for people in many ways not to be able to participate they don't have any technological skills. Like nowadays, everything banking, and we would people come into our services all the time worried about banking and shopping and government, gov.ie, and all the services that have moved online. But what people, our groups want, the nursing home, they really wanted to get audiobooks, because obviously people who might be spending all day on their own and things, it's a huge thing, and like they were delighted with that skill to be able to download audiobooks, and that's transformative. And in terms of the other group, they were looking for shopping or how to make FaceTime calls with relatives and things like that. So it really is transformative, helping people with their literacy.
Thanks, Catherine. And just moving on then to the challenges and the learning. So like with anything, when you're working with money, people know with budgets that things change with life circumstances and just things that you didn't think of that you put in, that all looks great on paper, but when it comes to it, then there's, you know, hiccups along the way. But we did get just under 30,000, and what I didn't think would happen, which was actually wonderful, was that Poetry Ireland had given us their writers for free. So their budget was a big one, but because they have their own kind of community program outreach, that they were able to fund this, which was great, which left us more of a budget to spend, which then we had to kind of come back to the drawing board, and it was great with that fund that you could just kind of come back and look at what we needed. And so moving on to other areas then that popped up, like the needs of the group. So the Maryfield and Glenallen nursing home, we didn't think about their mobility needs, and such as in getting to rehearsals, coming out of the venue, we needed a bus, and we needed a disability bus, and we had 3 people in wheelchairs as well that were coming. So so that in itself we had to look at in advance, and then they were pricey, but that was okay. And then the venue itself in the Civic, that hadn't really been used as a theatre space, so there was a lot of issues then that kind of popped up with even wheelchair access to the stage, and then there was no green room as well, so people couldn't relax the backstage before getting on in front of family and friends. So we had to improvise, and so we just basically had the performers in the audience, and they were very comfortable then. They were very well received. So so there was a lot of chopping and changing, and then Catherine will tell you as well, I think there was a hole in the roof.
Yeah,
in the
it was
Civic.
plastic buckets on the day of the performance. They were gone by the evening, thankfully, but yeah, that was a pretty stressful day.
But we just said the show must go on, and we did. We went along with it, and it was a lovely, beautiful night. And yeah, I think now, let's see. Yeah, we'll talk about the feedback here. So Catherine mentioned a few things of what they got out of it, but go ahead.
Yeah. Like this is just a little taster of the feedback we have. Like I think one of the wise women, what she enjoyed about the chapel class was very informative. I really enjoyed reading 2 books online. I can actually use audiobooks now, which is easygoing, and the tutor had a lot of patience. How was the creative class? It was very important for integration in this country. That was from one of our Ukrainian learners. And how was your experience performing on stage? And this, I think, was from one of our Ladbray Park group. So she said, before I did these classes, I never thought in a million years I'd actually have the confidence to get up on stage. It was like a kind of therapy. When I was on stage, I felt the engagement of the audience, and it helped a lot that the crowd was so supportive. I was so proud of myself. And I think that was it, like the ripple effect for people. And both Jessica and myself are continuing to engage with the groups. And actually, what's really nice is some of the groups have continued, who would never have met before, have continued to engage with one another. Like, for example, the book club would be one example, but the wise women have been up to the nursing home a couple of times, and they have been teaching. They're incredibly skilled craftswomen, so they have been teaching knitting and craft to the residents in the nursing home. So it's like it's enriched so many people's lives in so many ways. And I think for the ripple effect in Ballyfermot for people who attended the performance, and just seeing the capabilities and the skills of different communities within Ballyfermot was huge and transformative. I think particularly nowadays, where some of the narrative can be quite negative around integration, it was great to see it in action and to see the positive effect. And like this on the ground, very often there's a very different feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Catherine. And we currently have more creative writing classes as well now coming up with a combined Glenallen Nursing Home and the Wise Women's Group, which is great. So I'm excited about that. It's kind of mushroomed, and they are also doing digital skills, so more tablet classes. So they were very popular. What I'd like to do now is stop talking and show you the words from the actual participants who took part on the course. So we have a long documentary, but we've made shorter ones of 3 of the groups that we captured through the Keep It Lit. And this is Maryfield and Glenallen Nursing Home. So
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Would you recommend Keep It Lit, the Keep It Lit programme to other people?
Oh,
To other
absolutely.
people, yeah.
Without a doubt.
I thought it was wonderful. I loved everything about it. I had forgotten that I was capable of doing something. I had told myself that I was too old, and this was all fresh and new. And the more that I wrote and the more that I thought of what was happening, the more I was able to do.
Yes, yeah, well, we found it very enlightening, and having to learn how to use the iPad was terrific, because we can send emails and all the rest nowadays, which didn't know how to do before.
Creative writing I loved, and I have to say it brought back so many memories. It was lovely, and hopefully we can continue with it.
Well, I enjoyed it. It was new, I haven't done it before. It was interesting, and I met new people.
I think the ideas that comes into it opened floodgates. That's all I can say. Things I hadn't thought of for years, and places. And what happened was, when we were writing about these things, I felt I was back there. You know, it all came back to the feelings that you had. It was absolutely wonderful. And I feel that I could go on. With that class, it was so wonderful that I don't want to give it up.
And the poetry, that was beautiful, the poetry sessions.
The show was lovely, wasn't it?
I said to my relatives, I'm going to make an ass of myself, you can pretend you don't know me. But surprisingly, I didn't. I was terrified going on.
Nobody did.
But
Everyone was great.
We all just went on and we spoke normal, yeah.
Because we were sincere. Now let's give ourselves a clap on the back. We meant it.
Oh, absolutely,
I think
yeah.
everybody else was the same. I was very happy that, because of how old I am, that I was able to do these things, because I had thought I had gone past it, and I wasn't gone past it. Now if I could dance as well, I'd be back.
now. So thank you everybody very much for tuning into us on our Keep It Lit program, and I hope you enjoyed that video and that you got a sense of what it was like, you know, for the participants. You can of course check out the full documentary and the other participants in there with the BTAC Traveller Group, yeah, and if you have any questions, myself and Catherine would be happy to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, Catherine. That was really brilliant. It's so inspiring. It's just so inspiring to hear about the project and the impact. You know, it really does sound like it rippled, like you said. And we might, if it's okay, just move on to their next speaker and then take questions together at the end, if
Sure.
that's okay.
No
Just
problem.
conscious of time. Davna, if that's okay with you, we might turn to you and I will share your slides now.
Perfect. So good morning, everyone. My name's Davna Hickey and I'm the Education, Training and Employment Coordinator with Cork Simon Community, and it's an honour to be invited to speak at the event today. So I'd like to extend my thanks to Derv and all the team at NALA for the invitation, and thanks to Jessica and Catherine also for your fantastic presentation. We could relate a lot to your work, and there was a lot of similarities there and a lot of learning as well to be gained from your presentation. So I suppose to start off with, I think it's important to give a background in relation to the context that our literacy work at Cork Simon takes place. Cork Simon Community campaigns to end homelessness and provides a range of accommodation and other supports to people experiencing homelessness, many of whom have complex needs. The Education, Training and Employment project, where I'm based, sits within a broader social integration and participation service, and it's designed as a holistic kind of support, as part of a holistic support package to provide people with sustainable routes out of homelessness and into integrated living in their local communities. So in terms of the learner profile that we work with, they're some of the most marginalised and excluded in society. It's generally accepted that people within homeless services have higher levels of unemployment, lower levels of educational attainment, have often experienced extreme poverty, social exclusion, deprivation, and they present within services with a range of complex needs such as physical and mental health challenges, addictions, undiagnosed learning difficulties, childhood trauma. So our broader service and within the Education, Training and Employment project, we adopt a low threshold approach. We operate a trauma-informed service model as well. So our goal would be to meet people exactly where they're at and remove as many barriers as possible, so that they can engage with our supports and can access us where they may not be able to access supports elsewhere because of the complexities of their situation. We'd also work with key workers, care staff, other therapeutic professionals within homeless services to ensure that the necessary wraparound supports are in place for the achievement of practical learning outcomes. Our service kind of encompasses a number of different key elements. We have a programme of community ed classes that run across the spring and autumn terms. These classes offer the opportunity for skills development, QQI accreditation, but also outside of that, and we'd run classes like in literacy related classes like computers, general learning, ESOL, and then some creative arts subjects as well. But I suppose the classes not only offer opportunities for education and learning and maybe the gaining of qualifications, but they also, from a holistic supports package perspective, they help people to use their time positively. They promote harm reduction. They can provide routine and structure and a forum for people to build positive social networks. We'd also run a work-related training program, and this is aimed at the long-term unemployed and people wishing to re-enter the labour market. We'd offer industry standard certified training courses across sectors such as construction, warehousing, retail, hospitality, security. And for some of the people that we work with, they're affected by the habitual residence condition, which means they're not entitled to any housing supports. So for them, their only route out of homelessness would be by finding employment. We also run therapy and learning activities, and these are to promote soft skills such as teamwork, communication, self-confidence, well-being, resilience, and these skills are core to progressing in education and progressing into employment as well. They really kind of underpin the achievement of hard outcomes. We'd run maybe programs for specific demographics within homeless services, like women in services or people in recovery from addiction as well, bringing in a well-being element into those programs. And finally, we deliver one-to-one tailored education and employment supports, so people have access to one-to-one mentoring and guidance for progression into further education and training or into jobs. And we'd help with career planning, CV preparation, job search, job applications, as well as interview skills. So it's quite it's broad in scope what we offer within our service. And you're probably wondering, where does literacy fit into all of this? And I suppose before the Innovation and Collaboration Fund last year, literacy work was just naturally incorporated into the work that we do through these other programs. As I said, many of our learners would have limited educational attainment and would experience literacy difficulties. So in order for them to participate in these range of supports, we just had to teach them how to use computers. We had to help them fill out application forms. We had to help them with their QQI, their coursework for QQI accreditation. Otherwise, this work wouldn't have been done. But I suppose the funding last year allowed us to take our literacy work to the next level and make it a more targeted intervention, I suppose. And we did this through the introduction of a learner support service. Focus Ireland on this, who are another homeless service provider, national, but we collaborated with the Cork branch. And the main purpose of the learner support service was to provide essential assistance to homeless people in Cork who faced unmet literacy, numeracy and digital literacy needs. But our main goal was to try and target the most hard to reach and the most vulnerable, the ones that weren't engaging with their service already, those that might be who feel apprehensive about participating in like classroom-based supports or our more formal educational offerings. And we really wanted to extend our reach into this population, to build relationships and I suppose support them to take the next step. I know community education is often seen as entry level, but this is even taking a step back. It's like creating a progression pathway into community ed for our demographic. The Learner Support Service enabled us to create a staffing role specifically purposed to do this. It gave us the capacity to expand our range of offerings and take a very targeted approach to reaching the most vulnerable. We did this through a number of different facets. One of them was strengthening our links with other teams within Cork, Simon and Focus Ireland, particularly the housing support teams. So it was, really working with our colleagues in Housing First, Rapid Rehousing and Tenancy Sustainment and High Support Housing to give us access to residents within those projects. We could go and meet them with their key workers, be introduced and build positive relationships so that they would feel comfortable even just coming on board to see what we're about, not even to engage, just to see what we were about essentially. From there, we developed a program of informal educational activities to build their confidence, to build learners' confidence to take the next step. So, as I said, even the thought of coming into a classroom-based setting could be very off-putting for some of the people that we're working with. So we're very conscious of trying to be innovative and creative and create opportunities for learning that don't come, strategies for learning where maybe the learners don't even know that they're learning. So we ran educational outings, we ran some creative arts projects, we ran literacy socials, but I'll talk about maybe the specifics of those activities later on in the next slide. I've got some visuals to represent those. And then the hope was that, like, once we had people engaged, maybe in a more in an informal capacity, they'd gain the confidence, then they'd gain the trust with us as staff to maybe test out one of our community ed classes. Even if they only tried it, came into an art class, they might try a 3-hour or 2-hour manual handling, just our more structured offerings. That was the hope, that it was creating a progression into those supports, and then providing classroom assistance to those learners. Again, it could be intimidating if they had to go in and do a registration form, or if there was coursework involved, that there would be somebody there who had that personal connection with them and could offer that in-class person-centered support while they were engaging with a class or a training. We also did digital skills for job seekers, and this was very much tied to our work-related training program. Again, like, just even access to the digital tools to apply for jobs. Like, people are in homelessness, they don't have the devices, they don't have internet access, they don't know how to set up, they mightn't have an email account, they don't know how to use Indeed or job search. So having a specific space for 2 hours a week where they could come in and use our facilities, our Wi-Fi, our computers, and there was somebody there to guide them through the process of setting up an Indeed account. And we'd really operate from an empowerment model. Our goal is always to kind of show people to how to do it themselves, like, because we're very cognizant that we can't be with them all the time. So we really want to give them the skills to take away with them, then that they can do it themselves. So the next slide we'll move on is kind of there. It gives a visual illustration of some of what we did. So these were some of the specific activities that we facilitated through the learner support service. We did a lot of educational outings, and they really loved this. And this was our first time. We're really grateful to have been able to give the people we work with these experiences. As I said, like, you know, they're some of the most marginalized and excluded, and it can be quite emotional, actually, when you offer them an experience that they might not have had before, like, you know. So we were in it. The picture you see in the middle was our horticulture and stone carving tutor arranged a trip to the Aran Islands, and they got to meet kind of master stone masons up there. They got to visit the Aran Islands, but for them, like, they'd be completely excluded from traditional holiday experiences. So bringing somebody to the Aran Islands, you may as well be bringing them abroad, and you're just exposing them to a completely new world, new experience. And some of them said it was actually one of the best days of their lives. We did more local kind of activities to Spike Island, Cork City Jail, Blackrock Castle, and I suppose exhibitions like this gave them the opportunity to engage with literacy related activities in a very engaging manner. So even like some of the exhibitions, they might have utilized multimedia and audiovisual techniques and interactive elements to their exhibitions. Also, they loved guided tours. They really liked that. We got a lot of positive feedback from guided tours and getting new information there. We did a creative arts project, a couple of creative arts projects. They made a film. They would have developed that film. It's an animated film. They developed that from storyboard. They came up with the idea, the concept, the script. They did all the animation around it. another fab experience for them. They did a photography project, and we also ran literacy socials, which proved to be very popular and very informal, just an opportunity to come together in a very social way, where we played board games, did quizzes, word searches, karaoke, which actually proved to be a great kind of innovative approach to literacy, where and digital literacy, like it promoted the use of computers. They'd have to search for their song on YouTube, and then singing the lyrics together. And yeah, it was all just in a really fun, positive, supportive and social environment, and that worked really well. We can move on to the next slide, thanks. And they're just some of the literacy resources that we purchased through the All Fund last year. And for us, it's great because they're there all the time now, and they're just so easy to pull out, particularly now, like say, with our community ed program finishing up. And the routine and the structure is so important in terms of retaining and engaging our learners, that if there's big gaps, you're at risk of losing them, or kind of them falling into falling out of the system again. So for us being able to pull out, just organize an afternoon, pull out, very, very simple, very, very easy, no organization kind of with it. Call them up. Do you want to come in and play a few games? Do you want to come in and for a party? And they love it. And as I said, extremely easy to facilitate. And we have those resources now on hand going forward, which we really appreciate. We can move on. So yeah, so just in terms of the outcome of our project, so 41 learners participated with the activities that we ran, the range of activities, and we completed a survey with a sample of those learners, and there was some very positive feedback that we got. And we were delighted to hear that the learners really did feel it benefited them in various different ways, like not only kind of through gaining literacy skills, the educational aspect, but also the social component, that it supported their overall kind of sense of well-being, their sense of self-confidence, the creation of positive social networks, and feeling included, I guess, feeling included, feeling seen. And we kept kind of hearing they loved being exposed to new things. These were all new things that we were opening up the world to them. That's what they loved. It was either new learning, new places, new activities. And they were kind of saying, we were asking, was there anything else that you'd like us to do? And they were saying, no, keep doing this, keep doing this, we like this. But I suppose one of the big benefits of the project was that 65% of the people who engaged with our learner support service activities, the informal activities, they subsequently went on to engage in one or more community education class or work-related training. So that was a resounding success. That was our intention, essentially, was to create a progression pathway for those who were apprehensive about the classroom-based supports. So we were delighted with that outcome. So yeah, I'm kind of coming towards the end. Oh yeah, the challenges, and similar challenges to or issues to what Jessica and Catherine raised. The short funding cycle and the project duration was an issue for us. I suppose it only ran for 4 months, and it was a very jam-packed and busy 4 months. We were quite ambitious in what we had put into the project, but I guess it felt kind of, and we achieved a lot, and we're very proud of what we achieved, and it was a success. But we felt that just as we were kind of getting a handle on things and establishing a solid foothold, the project came to an end. And at that time, we didn't know if we could carry it forward because the funding was uncertain. So it felt kind of frustrating. We had learned a lot about what worked, what didn't work. We learned a lot about our learners' needs, but we didn't know whether we were going to be able to do something like this again because of whether or not like we'd have the funding to do it. So yeah, like that is kind of one challenge I'm sure that many community ed based providers are very cognizant of, is the uncertainty of year to year funding and how difficult that kind of makes planning. It can be very, very stressful on the nerves, wondering where you stand kind of the following year, not wanting to set expectations as well for the learners. You've given them sort of great year kind of, and then, you know, maybe having to disappoint or not knowing if you're going to have to disappoint going ahead. And I suppose for us kind of maybe as a staff team, just the frustration of that, and also the frustration of if you've got a project and you see what's working well, you want to develop it and you want to sustain it. Like, you're like, this has worked for us. But I suppose recently we've been able to secure funding through a different stream, so we are able to carry elements of the learner support service over to this year, which is fantastic. And we'll be rolling out a summer program starting shortly, with the purpose of engaging new learners in our community ed classes and also retaining the learners from this year. So we're looking forward to that starting in the next few weeks, and so are they, most importantly. And yeah, just in terms of our literacy work for this year, it was actually very unfortunate, the timing for us. We just have, oh, that should read capacity constraint in 2024. I'm just looking up, I'm ahead of myself. But yeah, we have 2 new projects that we established this year within within the Education, Training and Employment Service. One to support people with disabilities who are accessing homeless services and finding employment, and another one using education training as employment as a means to reduce offending within the homeless population. The timing just completely clashed with us. For the Adult Literacy for Life Fund this year, we have a project that actually builds very nicely on the work that we did last year, but it's a much smaller endeavor than what we were able to facilitate in 2024 or in 2023. And we had got a lot of feedback from our colleagues around the community about a huge need within homeless services for developing some kind of supports around functional and financial literacy skills for homeless people who are transitioning into independent living. We really want to develop that project. We really see its importance and the drastic need for it. We just didn't have the capacity to do it this year. So we're hoping that that's something maybe for next year that we can work towards developing. And finally, I am going to finish my presentation with maybe just giving you some top tips about what has worked within our service for adopting a literacy-friendly approach, particularly that serves the needs of the demographic that we work with. So the first thing I would say, person-centered, so important. Get to know your learners on a personal level. Get to know get to know them, their personalities. Build positive, trusting relationships. Understand their individual likes, their dislikes, their learning styles, what challenges they might come up against. Ask them for feedback on your interventions. They are the experts on their own needs and they know what works for them. So I would say be constantly know your learners well and be person-centered in your approach. The next tip I'd give is make literacy and learning fun. And this is particularly crucial for a demographic such as ours, because there's so much going on for them, so much going on in their lives that it can be very difficult to hold their attention. Many will also have had negative experiences of traditional teaching and learning methods. So you need to be innovative and creative in your approach. And as I said, I'd suggest sometimes using strategies where they're learning without even realizing that they are learning. And my final tip would be to celebrate their achievements. It's so, so important. Like, you know, we're so cognizant of distance traveled is unique to each individual. For some people within our service, just showing up, just walking in the door is massive. And, you know, like say even somebody completing, as I say, a 2-hour fire safety or fire warden training, getting that certificate could be what it means to somebody else getting a university degree. So we are so conscious of acknowledging, you know, using positive reinforcement, motivating, encouraging. We run our annual awards ceremony and different events during the year just to recognize their achievements, make them feel seen, and give visibility. And I suppose importantly, for us to challenge stereotypes around homelessness as well. So that's my presentation for this morning. Thank you for having me, and it's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much, Davna. And again, such inspiring work, you know, to see that like 65% of those 41 people went on to do more courses. Like that is phenomenal when you think about the people we're talking about, and just such, you know, so much going on in their lives to even be able to find that energy in themselves to do it. I'm so struck by both projects. Just there's such an element of making learning safe. And I think that's so important, you know, in Nala and obviously everybody working in the literacy world, we know how school was just such a difficult place for a lot of people. So like you're saying, Davna, you're nearly trying to create conditions for people to learn without them realizing it, and not to, you know, in a negative way, but almost to just it's safe, it's comfortable here with us. And I do think sometimes that work, that almost like you say, pre-community education work, you know, I think people underestimate just how important this development work is, and it's happening all over the country. There's amazing work being done, and I actually think sometimes community projects don't give themselves, you know, the credit. They don't realize nearly the impact. So thank you so much for all of you today to really teasing that out for us, because I think it's really important. And I'm sure there's plenty of people on this call who are doing exceptional work and just nearly having the language to say that and acknowledge it. It's really inspiring. So I know we've come to 11 o'clock, but if anyone has any questions, you know, feel free to unmute yourselves and hop on the mic and ask, or you can put it in the chat. And any questions for both projects? A couple of lovely comments there in the chat. Does anybody have any questions for our speakers? Very quiet, but everybody's hanging on, so they want to hear the answers. I mean, I have one question if people want to take their time thinking of something. I suppose for me, I suppose, Davna, I was wondering about what were kind of some of the issues in terms of you said there, you know, you have to be flexible about people coming up or turning up. I suppose for you as facilitators, managing how many am I going to get today, or who, you know, who's going to turn up for like maybe the social literacy socials and things like that. How is that to manage?
Yeah, it's something, flexibility is key to our particular work, and we've got a few different strategies, I suppose, to promote attendance, but also to still maintain a safe environment. Well, one thing we always know, like you have your kind of your group number limits, but our kind of expectation, we know if we get 75% attendance, we're doing good. We would also be very maintain close contact with their learners. So even outside class times, we would be picking up the phone, ringing them, checking in with them, sending text message reminders, also linking in with their key workers and care staff to get them to do reminder calls, or support with maybe accompanying them to the activities as well if they feel nervous. We would welcome that they can bring a support person that they feel comfortable with. Yeah, so and then the other thing that we really, a big learning for us is kind of long form projects don't work because our learners are in very unstable circumstances and literally things can change for them from week to week, if not day to day. So we felt with stuff like the animation project, you know, we might have a facilitator who has an idea to run it maybe 2 hours over 6 weeks, and we're like, no, like you'll start off with a group at the beginning and the group at the end could be completely different. So we would try and do things more consolidated, you know, a week-long workshop or a 3-day kind of intensive workshop. And the learners said themselves that they actually prefer that and it suits them better.
That's really interesting, actually, and it struck me. Obviously, you know, Daphne, you spoke, and Jessica and Catherine as well, about the challenges of a very short funded project. You know, it was a 6 month scale, and I suppose that is a challenge. But then it's interesting how even the delivery stuff, if it is compressed, you can grab people for 3 weeks and you get them and just hold on to for those 3 weeks, work with them, and then, you know, almost do that intense work, like you said. Jessica and Catherine, would you have found that, like, with some of your work, you know, nearly having the date for the performance or the end of it, knowing what you're aiming for? Do you think that helped with your retention as well?
I think so, yeah. I think often learners, like, you know, adults' lives are very complicated. They are pressed for time. I think often running kind of 6 or 8 week things, because when I meet learners for the first time, they'll often ask me, how long does this go on for? Is one of the first questions people ask. So it is important to people. And I do think, like, exactly what Janet said, like celebrating learners, if you have, like, there's an end piece, whether it's an exhibition, whether it's just kind of celebrated within the centre. I do think that's really important for projects and for learners. It really does mean a lot to them.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And, like, I think when you see the video, like you shared as well, Jessica and Catherine, like, some of the comments people are making are extraordinarily powerful, you know, and I think it's the thing, isn't it, for all of us that are working in that work. You know, it's not, the numbers are important, how many people participated, and that's certainly how many people finished. But for someone to say, I thought I couldn't learn, and now I know I can, I mean, Jesus, that's the work, you know. So I think that's a really great thing as well, when a performance or doing something I didn't think I would do, and someone stepping back and being like, wow, what else can I do? You know, so it's a really, I think, brilliant to be able to capture that. And that's a credit to YEAB's projects and organizations, because you obviously, that's your bread and butter, you know, the richness of the impact. But I think that's very good, because again, sometimes I think in our sector, it's how we talk about the work, because we're used to hearing those things. But honestly, if you talk to a civil servant or a funder maybe, or policymaker, you know, they don't see that impact, because it's just not what they do day to day. So I think it's just great to have you explain it in that way. It's really effective. Does anybody have any other questions? You'd be very welcome to ask them. We will share, of course, contact details and stuff. So if you prefer to just follow up with either project, and like I was saying, like, obviously these were funded projects. You had additional funding and resourcing for it, but there are loads of key things there you can take away, even if you're not looking to do a big piece of work. And I'm sure it's stuff maybe you've done before, like Daphne said, reminder messages and phone calls. Just sometimes, though, the people that are more wary or nervous, they might need a couple of reminders, or, you know, like you said, allowing a support person to come in with them if they need just some of those different pieces of work. And I thought there was the most community sector comment when you said there was a hole in the roof and you found out in the day of your performance. It's like, yeah, having an unexpected leak. But, you know, so these are the realities we're all working in. But I really am so grateful, Daphne, Catherine and Jessica, for your time today and all your preparation for today's webinar.